Hand over now to Mr Alí Nakhjavani.
Good morning, friends. The subject today, as dear Ian was telling us, is magnets that attract divine confirmations. Of course, I don't know what these magnets are, but our teachings tell us what these magnets are. And if we use them, and if we master them, we will certainly be able to receive divine confirmations. Now, we'll have to depend a great deal on the sacred texts and the interpretations of Abdul Baha, of course, and of Shoghi Effendi. Now, before we go into the texts, I would like to just say that it would be useful, thank you, it would be useful for us to try and explore the meaning of divine confirmation, of course, based on our writings. Abdul Baha has given a few examples. Now, these examples are not a complete replica of the reality. Examples only show one aspect. Another example shows another aspect. For example, in connection with life after death, we have several examples given, because none of them really are complete in encompassing the entire reality for us. So one example gives one aspect, another example gives another aspect, and so on. There is a folklore tradition in Persian literature, which I'm sure Mr. Adib Taherzadeh or other Persians must have shared with you, but I'll just refer to it quickly, that in northern Persia, they wanted to make a test of blind people. And so they went into the villages and picked about 10 blind men and asked them whether they knew what an elephant was. They were illiterate and so on, and 3 of them had never heard the word elephant, did not know what it was, whether it was a picture or an object or an animal or what. So they picked these 3 and they said, we're going to show you an elephant. And so they sat them on a bench and they brought an elephant. And now each one was facing one part of the elephant. And so the one on one side, they said, now what do you think is an elephant? He was touching the tail and he said, this thing that you call elephant should be something like a rope. And the one in the middle, he said, what is an elephant to you? So he touched it and so on. He said, it's a big ball. It's a ball. It's a round globe. So, the one on the extreme left, they said, now what do you think is an elephant? And he touched and so on. He was touching the trunk. And he said, it's something like a pipe. It's quite a thick pipe. And it has 2 very pointed branches. Now, each one of them was right. But each one of them was giving one aspect of the elephant, not the whole thing. Now, examples are like that. Abdul Baha, when in some answered questions, gives examples and analogies. For those of you who speak Persian, he sometimes would say, in masala ast, na misl. این مسئله است نمیست, which means this is only an example, not an exact, complete replica of the object we are discussing. So, with this in mind, we can take some of the examples that Abdul Baha has given about divine confirmations. For example, in one of his tablets, he likens divine confirmations to a cloud. He says, now a cloud is carrying drops of water, but as it is blown by the wind, it moves over a desert and it would not release a single drop. And as fast as it can, it will pass over the desert because there is no attraction. The earth is not attracting. But when it reaches a jungle, a forest, it pours because there is attraction, there is capacity. So that is one example that Abdul Baha has given. Another example that he has given, someone has asked him about divine confirmations. And he says, you think of a spool in heaven. And this spool has silken thread. And the end of the thread is in your hand. And you pull, and the thread comes. You pull again, it comes again. But at one point, you see that something is stuck up there in the spool, and the thread doesn't come. He said that if you insist, and if you press too hard, the thread will snap and break. Wait. It is better to wait and then try again. It will come. That's another example given by Abdul Baha about divine confirmations, which I think the point he is making in this particular instance is that we should not insist. When we see that a door is not opening, we have prayed about it, and we wonder why God is not answering us. If we insist, something is going to snap and break. We should be resigned and be patient and wait. Because the answer to prayer sometimes is just that. This is not the time. I'll give it to you, but not the time. Just wait a little while. I remember Mr. Faizi giving with the hand of the cause, Mr. Faizi. I don't know how many of you met Mr. Faizi. He was a wonderful soul. Detached himself and humble, and with a deep understanding of spiritual realities. He said that once he was traveling in Iran, and he arrived in a little village, and in the village there were mostly illiterate Baha'is, and he said in the morning he was having a little walk in the village, and he saw two of the Baha'is sitting on the ground, one of them a rather elderly person, and another one, a young man. And the young man was asking the elderly gentleman, he says, I don't understand divine confirmations. Do you understand what they are? And the elder, he says, as soon as this question was asked, he says, I withdrew to one side because I didn't want them to see me. But I did want to know what the answer was. He said, the old man said, as they were sitting on the ground, he said, you see this ant? There was an ant there. He says, now, if you tell this ant, they were in the village, way out of the capital. If you tell this ant, go to Tehran, will it go? Will it be able to find its way to Tehran, the capital? He said, no. He said, But if we credit this ant with some intelligence, and this intelligent ant hears that there is a bus going to Tehran, it will find its way to the bus, and it will stick itself to the body of the bus. And when the bus goes, it'll go with it. Despite the wind, despite the rain, despite the storm and the dust, it'll get to Tehran. He said, in my view, divine confirmations is sticking to the bus. None of these things are the real thing. They asked an imam, how did you know God? He said, I came to know God by the way He changes my decisions, by the way He interferes in my life. You know, we have a prayer, hold thou my hand, O Lord. Now, supposing I have my hands in my pocket. I say, O Lord, hold thou my hand. Do you think that God is going to come and pull my hand from my pocket and extend it and then hold it? I'm not God, but I don't think He's going to do it. I think what He wants is that I should first take my hand off my pocket, extend it to Him, and then say, hold thou my hand. I should do my part. So divine confirmations depends on what we do first. Take the first step, and then He holds the hand and leads us. And we feel it. You know, in the writings we have two statements. For those of you who speak Persian, I'll repeat the exact words and then I'll give you the sense of it. Man kana lillah, kana Allahu lah. This is, of course, in Arabic, it's not in Persian. This is one, and the other one in kun ma'allah, tarallahu ma'ak. He's talking, the theme is the same theme. He says, if you are with God, God will be with you. Straightforward. Love me that I may love thee. But again, it is the first step. Love me that I may love thee. You see? Be with me that I may be with you. Again, first, be with me. The second statement includes the first thought, but adds something to it. Kun ma'allah, tarallahu ma'ak. Be thou with God, and you will see that He is with you. This thought has been added. You will see. In other words, He will show us that He is with us. He will not only be with us, but He will show us His signs that He is with us. And through the beholding these signs, our assurance increases and deepens, our love is enhanced, our willingness to be with Him, to sacrifice for Him, is increased. So, we will leave this subject now. I'm going to read you a few texts. There aren't too many, so I hope you don't mind. Two from Baha'u'llah, very brief. Should any man in this day arise with absolute detachment from all that is in the heavens and all that is on the earth, he will verily be empowered to subdue all created things. Whoso openeth his lips in this day, and maketh mention of the name of his Lord, the hosts of divine inspiration shall descend upon him. From the words of Abdul Baha, divine confirmations are different from talent and knowledge and intelligence. Pure motives, when combined with good planning, will attract divine confirmations. The meaning of angels is the confirmations of God and His celestial powers. Again from Abdul Baha, this other one, it is clear that in this day, confirmations from the unseen world are encompassing all those who deliver the message. Should the work of teaching lapse, these confirmations would be entirely cut off. And from Shoghi Effendi's letters, these two passages, Baha'u'llah has promised His divine assistance to everyone who arises with a pure and detached heart. And again, in another letter from Shoghi Effendi, mere intellectual understanding of the teachings is not enough. Deep spirituality is essential, and the foundation of true spirituality is steadfastness in the covenant. So, what I plan to do is to say a few words about each of these important subjects. One is detachment, the other is teaching, the other is steadfastness in the covenant, and finally, the overall theme, which includes, of course, these three, but includes other things as well, living the Baha'i life. These, I think, are important and powerful magnets that attract divine blessings. And I will give you my humble comments about each one of them. For example, on detachment. On detachment, we read in the Kitab-e-Aqdas that it says, soar on the wings of detachment. Detachment gives us wings. Through detachment, we fly. Without detachment, we're stuck on earth, sometimes even in the mud. Sometimes we dream. We dream that we are flying. Wonderful feeling. I think this means this shows the longing of the soul to fly, to soar, the longing of the soul to grow wings. And it's a beautiful, beautiful feeling. Again, we read in the gleanings that that the manifestations of God have been sent by God to man. Among the purposes that they have is to enable us at the moment of death to leave this world in a state of detachment. When you think about it, here are all these manifestations of God, progressive revelation of the past, of the future, coming to earth, teaching us, giving us their messages and teachings, and among their primary purposes is what? Is to enable us to become detached from this earth, so that when we die at the moment of death, we won't leave this world with a sense of attachment to it. We would leave this world with a sense of having renounced the world, of having turned away from the world, of having been detached from the world and all that it means and all that it contains and all that it demands. In one of his tablets, Mr. Taherzadeh has included this particular tablet in one of his volumes. I can't remember now which volume it was, but he has definitely quoted this particular tablet. It has not been translated into English, but he gives us his summary of the tablet. It's a very short tablet. In this tablet, Baha'u'llah says that between man and God there is a ladder. And this ladder has 3 steps. And in order to reach God, we have to pass through these 3 steps. And it's about detachment. And the first is to be detached from all material things of this world, the vanities of this world, the wealth, material wealth, the pleasures of this world, whatever they may be, and so on and so forth. So that I'm not going to spend too much time on it because you all understand it. It's very clear. Second is to be detached from the benefits of the next world. Now when I read that, I said, now, what does Baha'u'llah mean by that? And of course, it's when you think about it, when you meditate on it, it becomes clear. I think it means that when I do something, if I do something for him, it should not be with the expectation that he is going to pay me there. Business is business, in other words. You don't pay me here, surely you're going to pay me there. If this thought comes to us, that all right, you're not giving me anything here, but certainly when I go there, you're going to give me my reward. That is a little selfish, quite a selfish thought indeed. He wants us to be detached from this. It doesn't mean there is no reward, because he says there is reward and punishment. Both are there. But what it does mean is that I should not do things here in anticipation of that reward. Shouldn't be attached to that reward. If you give it to me, fine. If you don't give it to me, fine. The Bab goes even as far as saying in one of his writings that supposing, he says, that your reward is hell, would you obey me in this world? Of course, it will never be hell. But he's making a point. He's telling us, don't do anything in order to be paid back. That's what he's saying. This is detachment. This is one form of detachment. And then there is a third. When I came to the third, I said, wow, you took away this world from me, you took away next world from me. What is left? What is left? But he goes on to say that it is attachment to the world of names, titles, allocates, positions. My name, Ali Nakhjavani. Wow. I want him to remember me. It is a form of reward, but it's a very subtle, far subtler than just a reward. Although he knows our weaknesses, but he's giving us the ideal, the highest point. He does not want us to be at a point of being accepted, being passable, but at the minimum level. He wants us to be not only passable, but to achieve distinction. Not the minimum, but the maximum. Aim high as you can. Everything is relative, of course. Purity of motive is related to detachment. It is to do things with a pure heart. As Shoghi Effendi says, with a pure and detached heart. To me, purity of heart and purity of motive are very much alike. I think it is, why am I serving Baha'u'llah? Why am I teaching the cause? Why am I doing what I am, the little thing I'm doing? Why? What is my motivation? You see, he wants our motivation to be one thing, and only one thing, and that is to win his good pleasure, period. He knows it's enough. He sees it is enough. If he accepts me, that's enough. Then our deeds become pure, become selfless. A few words on teaching. We heard Abdul Baha say that if we do not teach, the confirmations will be cut off. We have to learn that as part of our Baha'i life, we should teach the cause. Indeed, it's more than should teach, we must teach the cause. We must have the courage to teach the cause. We must have the trust and reliance to teach the cause. We must deliver the message ourselves. You know, we have now these study circles, which are fine. But study circles, this is an institutional activity. It's not a personal, private activity. What I do by going to a study circle, I'm just participating in a community activity. Quite often, particularly during our travels, when we arrive in a country, we say, how is the teaching work in your country here? Oh, fine. Do you have firesides? How many firesides do you have? Oh, yes, we have X number of study circles. We confuse study circles with firesides. We confuse an institutional activity with a personal activity, an individual activity. Baha'u'llah is telling us, teach the cause. You and I are expected to teach the cause, whether we have a study circle or not. For years we didn't have study circles. We were teaching the cause. We should continue now to teach the cause, and we'll continue to teach the cause. This awareness of our responsibility to deliver the message is something we cannot avoid, we cannot escape. And it is such an important thing. Speaking about the teaching work, Abdul Baha once said, if you are asleep, wake up. If you are awake, sit up. If you are seated, stand. If you are standing, march. If you are marching, run. Do you think, friends, that in the history of our faith, for the last 161 years, the victories that have been won the teaching work, the expansion work, and so on, do you believe that we won these victories through people who just woke up, or who just sat up in their beds, or merely stood up? Or were the victories won through those who marched? Stood up, yes, but who marched, and who ran, and who perspired, and who became tired. That's what he wants us to do. He wants us to march, not merely, even to stand is not enough, because standing is not going to win any victories for the faith. We just watch, we just observe. And sometimes we observe and criticize, instead of at least clapping and applauding and encouraging. We don't sometimes, I don't say you, no, never. I mean the person sitting next to you. Baha'u'llah in the Kitab al-Aqdas says, we behold you from our realm of glory. Friends, Baha'u'llah is watching over us. He sees this meeting here. We behold you, we see you from our realm of glory. And we will send forth our hosts, our angels, if you arise to serve the cause, to advance the cause, to teach the cause. Shoghi Effendi, in one of his letters to the American friends, he even says, let the doubter arise. When I read that, I said, believe me, I am a doubter, yes. Yeah, he's telling me, Ali, I'm not calling you, you doubting Thomas, get out of my way. He's not telling me this. He's telling me, Ali, you doubt? Okay, come. Try it. Try Baha'u'llah. Arise, move, and you will see that he is faithful to his promise. He tells us to be faithful to our promises. You think he's not faithful to his own promises? Impossible. If he says that the hosts on high are ready to rush forth, it means just that. If he says, I'm beholding you, it means just that. The angels are there. Shoghi Effendi, in one of his letters, he says, these divine confirmations, which are likened to angels and sanctified souls and so on, he says, they are waiting, patiently waiting for us to arise and move, so that they rush forth. He uses the words rush forth. So they will rush forth to come to your aid. This requires not only faith, but it requires trust. It requires certitude and trust. It requires reliance upon him, upon his word, that he will be faithful to his promise. And therefore, he says with assurance, let the doubter arise and see for himself that this is a reality. Confirmations are true, are real, and they will come to us if we only have a life which is in conformity with the conditions that he has laid down in his writings. Shoghi Effendi, in one of his letters, someone has asked him, we have, I know, receptive souls, but how can I find them? He says, you pray. You pray every day. Oh God, send me receptive souls. and He will send them to you. As simple as that. We should want to be a vehicle. We should want to deliver the message. We should pray that Baha'u'llah will send us the receptive souls. Somebody around 1940 asked Shoghi Effendi, he had a pilgrim coming from Europe. I think it was either 40 or 41, I'm not sure now. He asked him, what is the degree of receptivity in Europe at this time? He said 2%. This was 1940 or 41. All right? He also has written that the greater the suffering of people, the more intense will be their receptivity. We will suppose that there has been no suffering of any kind in Europe from 1940 till now, for the last 65 years. Let us suppose none. That we didn't have any Second World War, we didn't have any problems at all. Still, we will say 2%. I think it's more than 2%. I think it's probably 5% now, maybe even more. But I'm ready to strike a deal with you on 2%. Take the population of Northern Ireland, and this summer school represents Northern Ireland for me. Take the 2% of the total population of Northern Ireland and compare that with the Bahá'í population and see where we are and whether we have indeed arisen and moved in accordance with his expectations, his standards. Shoghi Effendi, in one of his letters to the American believers, uses 4 adverbs for the teaching work. Prayerfully, tactfully, lovingly, persistently. I repeat those adverbs. Prayerfully, tactfully, lovingly, persistently. On the question of persistently, it means every day. In fact, he actually, in one of his letters, he says, we should mention the name of Baha'u'llah every day of our lives, at least once. That means in every year, 365 days, let us say, we are supposed to mention the faith at least 365 times every year. We have to bring ourselves to account each day and ask ourselves, do I do this or not? That's what he expects from us. He says that we should make the teaching work the dominating passion of our lives. Now, what does it mean? This word passion is a very strong word. Passion, you can have a passion for money, you can have a passion for position and rank, you may have a passion for baser instincts. He says, put all these passions aside. The dominating passion should be not only your love for the cause and your love for Baha'u'llah, but the teaching work. You should be teaching, you should be longing to teach, you should be desiring to teach, you should feel the need to teach. Because through teaching you receive divine confirmations. And if you don't, you're cutting it off. You're cutting off those divine confirmations. It is to that extent. We leave teaching, we'll just say a few words about the covenant. I mean, I've been mentioning the covenant quite often during the last 2 days. But steadfastness in the covenant is so important. Sometimes we think, and I'm afraid we think mistakenly, that the covenant business and firmness in the covenant, that was all for during the period of Abdul Baha, because he was the center of the covenant. Now I've finished. It's now, covenant is over. It's not so. The covenant is a continuing thing. It's with us. And we have to be firm in the covenant. Abdul Baha once said that the covenant was now, during his ministry, at the morning time. In other words, the sun of the covenant has risen, it's morning time. Probably about, let's say, 7 o'clock in the morning. 6 o'clock in the morning. Now, it's probably about 8 o'clock in the morning. This thing is going to continue right through to the end of the dispensation, my dear friends. This is the meaning, according to Shoghi Effendi, the interpreter of our teachings, that what Baha'u'llah meant by this is the day that will not be followed by night means the covenant. And the focal center of the covenant today is the universal house of justice. We have to think in terms along the lines that the House of Justice thinks. We have to read the writings of the House of Justice. We have to accept them. We have to follow them. We have to be anxious. Any news from the World Center? We have to be constantly asking this question. What news from the World Center? What is the wish of the House of Justice? The House of Justice just told us a few months ago that there will be another plan, for example. That's wonderful news. At the end of the 5-year plan, there's going to be another plan. We should be awaiting the arrival of this plan with great excitement. And we should know what the goals and objectives will be, and to identify ourselves with those objectives. The other thing, you have to tell me about the time. the living the life, Someone asked Abdul Baha about living the Baha'i life when he was in the United States. He said, in order for you to live the Baha'i life, you should first acquire a thirst for spirituality. You must become thirsty for spirituality. And in order for you to acquire this thirst, you should pray, you should read the writings of Baha'u'llah, you should meditate on life after death. And then you begin to live the life. Praying every day, reading the writings every day, constantly thinking that this world is a transient world, an ephemeral world. Now, for example, as I was just telling you, Baha'u'llah tells us to bring ourselves to account each day. I think no one has the right to ask me, Ali, did you have your obligatory prayer today or not? But I don't only have the right, I have the obligation to ask myself, did I perform my obligatory prayers today? I have the right and the duty to ask myself. Bring yourself to account each day, not each week. I should ask myself, if I want to live the Baha'i life. Reading the writings, Baha'u'llah says read the writings twice a day, in the morning and in the evening. Again, I have the duty to ask myself, am I reading the writings, some writing of Baha'u'llah in the morning and in the evening? Do I do that? How do I expect myself to grow? How do I expect myself to live the Baha'i life? How do I expect myself to be a recipient of divine confirmations? And then reflecting on life after death, to realize that this is not a permanent thing, that we are here. God bless Mr. Bartlett, he explained it to us so well the other day. Yeah. Eternity is ahead. This is only some 70, 80 years or so. It's nothing compared to eternity. We have to think about this. That the time will come, we go, we have to face our judgment, and our life would be reviewed before our eyes, and a decision will be taken as to what our destiny is going to be. Having done these things, then he says, you then live the Baha'i life after having acquired this thirst for spirituality. You know, Violette and I have seen many almost insignificant Baha'is becoming giants in the cause. Throughout our lives, we saw that. When we read in the writings that an atom can become a sun, you think this is a hyperbole, an exaggeration of some kind? It's not. We have seen atoms becoming suns. We have seen drops becoming oceans. We have seen mosquitoes becoming eagles. This is true. It's not a hyperbole. Through divine confirmations, this happens. There is a transformation that takes place. There is an enhancement that takes place. You know, in one of his tablets, Abdul Baha says, okay, in one of his tablets, Abdul Baha says that our relationship to the cause is of two kinds. Unfortunately, this tablet has not yet been translated. But if you have any doubts that whether such a tablet exists or not, you may write to the World Center and say, this old fool told us there is such a tablet. Is there such a tablet? Please send me a copy. Relationship, or our relationship to the faith, is of two kinds. One is the relationship that could be likened to, he says, a plant in a garden. The second relationship could be likened to the relationship of a ray to the sun. Having said this, then he says, my hope is that your relationship will be of the second type. That's the end. That's all. It's a very brief, short tablet. Now, let us think about this for a moment. What's wrong with being a flower in the garden? In fact, there are prayers to say, oh God, make me a flower in thy garden. What's wrong with that? Nothing wrong with it. It's only a minimum. It's just passable. Just passable. When we go to school, I don't know how it is in Northern Ireland here. What is the passing mark at school in Northern Ireland? How much? I can't hear too well, you know that. No, what is the number? C. It is, you see, you pass when you have C. And D is failing, you fail. All right. What he's telling us is, don't be satisfied with C. Aim for A. And please avoid D. That's what he's saying. Don't be satisfied with the minimum. Go for the maximum. So he says, my hope is that you will be a ray from heaven, a ray from the sun. Now, if you analyze these two analogies, here is the flower in the garden. What does it do? Give me water. Give me a ray of that sun. Give me good soil. Give me good fertilizers, etc., etc. It's continuously give me. What do? Well, I'm growing. Don't you like my colors? That's all I'm doing. I'm continuously at the receiving end of things. Look at the ray of the sun. And of course, the flower in the garden says, this garden is the cause of Baha'u'llah. I love my garden. I'm proud of my garden. I want to be a Baha'i. Fine. Now, all these things are said by the ray coming from the sun. I belong to the sun. I am known. My name is Baha'i, after Baha'u'llah's faith. I'm proud to be a Baha'i. But the basic difference is that the flower is continuously expecting to receive, but the ray is continuously giving. It's giving life, it's giving light, it's giving energy. And he wants us to be not just a flower, which is not bad, it's passable, to be giving, being continuously giving. Keith read us today this passage from the Hidden Words. To give and be generous is one of my attributes. To give is God's attribute. Continuously gives, doesn't receive, he gives. He wants us to be like him. He wants us to follow in his footsteps, the footsteps of his manifestations, of his holy ones, of his guided ones, of his inspired ones. That's what he wants us to be. He wants us to be continuously pouring out, and pouring out not selfishly, pouring out selflessly. You know, there are two types of love. There is selfish love and there is selfless love. In his tablet to Nasruddin Shah, Baha'u'llah says, those who are around you love you. I love you also. But they love you for their own sakes. I love you for your own sake. I'm sure you understand this. In other words, they love you because they want to receive some gifts from you. They are expecting something from you, and that's why they love you. That is selfish love. I love you for your own sake. This is selfless love. We should love selflessly. We should serve selflessly. We should move and teach selflessly. Not in order to acquire popularity or a name or the recognition of others or the applause of others. Now, we might think that, well, all these high standards of life, how can I, a humble little something in the cause, a weak, simple soul as I am, who am I? How can I reach these high standards? Okay, now I'll end my talk by reading to you just a few passages from Shoghi Effendi. Allow these words to sink in your hearts. They are not my words. They are words from our beloved guardian. The cause was established by dedicated souls who, for the most part, were neither rich, famous, nor well educated, but whose devotion, zeal, and self-sacrifice overcame every obstacle and won miraculous victories for the faith of God. Another one. We all have weak points. Do you mind if I stop here 1 minute? We all have weak points. If there is anyone who thinks that he has not any weak points, I'm afraid to say he is mistaken. Each one of us sitting in this room or standing in this room, we all have, Shoghi Effendi says, we all have weak points. The purpose of our life is to try and find these weak points. In fact, in one of his tablets, Abdul Baha uses the word to discover. He says, discover your weak points. Do you know why he uses the word discover? Because they're covered up. Do you know what covers them up? Our ego. Our ego covers up our weak points. It doesn't allow us to see them. We have to tell Mr. Ego, please get out of my way. Please shut up. Please leave me to myself. Please allow me the time. Allow me the time to know myself in the sense that I come to realize what are my weak points. And to try to the extent that I can to change my weak points into strong points. But if I think that I will one day have no weak points, I am mistaken. I will always have weak points. Because we are all imperfect. We will all continue to be imperfect. The perfect exemplar of our faith was Abdul Baha. Shoghi Effendi in his dispensation says that no guardian of the faith can ever claim to be a perfect exemplar of the faith. He said, he's not a perfect exemplar. Now, if Shoghi Effendi says, I'm not a perfect exemplar, excuse me, who are you? Who am I? We cannot be perfect. The cause is perfect. The teachings are perfect. But you and I, it's a relative thing. We'll never be 100% perfect. But what we can do is to discover our weak points, reduce our weak points to a minimum, so that the maximum will be strong points, inshallah. That's all we can do. Coming back to Shoghi Effendi, we all have weak points, but when we arise to serve Baha'u'llah, he helps us to overcome them in a truly miraculous way. And this finally, the glory of our faith is not that people with unique abilities do the work of the cause, but that it is done by the sacrifice of loving and devoted souls who arise selflessly to undertake work they feel themselves incompetent sometimes to achieve. God works through them and endows them with gifts they did not dream they could ever possess.
Thank you very much, Mr Nakhjavani. I read an article recently which said that in this day of the MTV soundbite generation, only a truly exceptional speaker can hold the attention of an audience for longer than 20 or 30 minutes, and that if you're going to speak for any length of time, you need a PowerPoint presentation at the very least. Well, I think we've seen that in the last 3 mornings of this school, we've had a truly exceptional speaker who's shared with us insights and inspiration and kept us entertained. And I think we owe Mr Nakhjavani for these 3 mornings a real thank you.